Today, I'm going to tell you about a real and unbelievable experience that completely changed my life. During a simple football game, an impact on my head launched me into something far beyond our reality. I saw things that defy logic and received a revelation about the future. Something great will happen on March 1st, 2025. But before starting this incredible story, comment here from which city you are watching this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories like this. My name is Michael Smith. I'm not a writer or speaker. I'm just an ordinary man living in Boston, trying to live his life without much pretension. However, an inexplicable experience during a football game forever changed the way I see the world and myself. Today, I share this first-person account, not to gain fame, but to record, in my own words, a journey that almost took me to the brink of death and returned me to life with a transformative mission. I was there that day when energy seemed to vibrate through every inch of the Boston University football field. The sky was clear and the sun was shining brightly, announcing a perfect day for a match. I, Michael Smith, was running with the ball at my feet, immersed in the frantic pace of the game, when suddenly, everything changed. The match was fierce, and the fans' screams mixed with the sound of passes and feet hitting the grass. On a decisive play, I ran to intercept a ball that somehow seemed to defy gravity. As I approached, an opponent, whose name doesn't come to mind at the moment, lost in the adrenaline, was also competing for the same space. Our bodies met abruptly. Amidst the chaos, I felt a violent impact on my temple. It was as if the world had been abruptly stopped. "Michael!" shouted a teammate, but his voice sounded distant, almost like an echo in an endless tunnel. My body began to disintegrate, not physically, but in such a way that consciousness seemed to break away from the bonds of space-time. In the blink of an eye, the sounds, smells, and color of the countryside became mere memories of a distant past. As he fell, the feeling of disorder and confusion was overwhelming. The impact to the head, which initially seemed like just a bump, became the portal to something bigger. My legs, which used to run with determination, now moved disjointedly, as if they had a life of their own. Every fiber of my being screamed in protest, trying to comprehend what was happening. I saw the grass move in a slow, hypnotic movement, the colors mixing in a whirlwind of impossible-to-identify hues. "No, this can't be happening," I muttered to myself, trying to maintain a shred of lucidity. But reality crumbled before my eyes. The intensity of the impact transformed into an explosion of sensations, where time seemed to lengthen and space distort. The wind, which before was a mere companion to the game, now sounded like a whispering voice, full of omens and mysteries. My mind, still struggling to understand what was happening, began to uncover a parallel reality. The sensation of floating set in a strange and frightening way. I saw myself separated from my body, as if I were witnessing a film where the protagonist was in imminent danger. The physical pain turned into spiritual anguish, and I realized that at that very moment, I was on the edge of a threshold that separated earthly existence from something far beyond what I had ever imagined. The minutes, or was it seconds? They dragged on in a surreal silence. The football field, once a place of competition and energy, was now transformed into a transitional setting. The vision of colleagues, colors, and sounds merged into an abstract picture, where the physical impact became insignificant compared to what was to come. Still trying to regain some sense of reality, my last conscious words were directed to myself. What does this mean? Why now? These questions echoed in the immensity of the unknown, foreshadowing the beginning of a journey that would take me to face the limits of life and death. Immediately after that brutal impact, the feeling that came over me was one of disconcerting lightness. Instead of the expected agony, my consciousness seemed to float, slowly breaking free from the bonds of my physical body. I, Michael Smith, watched my environment transform before my lifeless eyes, while everything around me distorted and lost its defined shape. I found myself in a kind of twilight lit by soft, silvery reflections. The edges of the football field dissolved into waves of light, as if every sound and color were part of a sensory symphony I had never experienced before. The sound of shouting and banging was now replaced by an ethereal murmur, a whisper that seemed to come from all directions. Is this real? I questioned myself in the midst of this new perception, trying to grasp the tenuous thread that separated reason from daydream. At one point, I felt like I was suspended in time, an eternal pause where past, present, and future coexisted. I could see fragments of the countryside, but also distant images, as if my mind were a screen projecting scenes from a life I knew nothing about. During this transition, a figure in the eye of distance began to emerge, not as a defined entity, but as a collection of memories and sensations that clustered around me. The boundaries between what I knew and what was now presented were blurred, and every moment seemed charged with a hidden meaning. The environment was a place where the limits of the physical dissolved, and existence was measured not by touch or sight, but by an internal perception that went beyond what the ordinary senses could reach. Are you prepared to see what lies beyond? I thought I heard a voice, not with my ears but directly in my soul. The question was hypnotic, and although I had no answers, the feeling that something great was about to be revealed enveloped me completely. Amid this uncertainty, the feeling of floating intensified, as if I were being carried by an invisible current that guided me to a new level of existence. My mind, previously so accustomed to the routines and certainties of the material world, now found itself facing a reality where barriers were moldable and the concept of time became relative. Each thought seemed to take on its own shape, releasing images and emotions that I could never have planned. At the same time, the fear of the unknown and the reverence for the mystery of what was happening were mixed in a whirlwind of feelings. As I advanced through this surreal landscape, I observed how my childhood memories, my fears and dreams intertwined, forming an emotional mosaic that ran smoothly. At one point, the intense colors and abstract shapes became so vivid that it felt like I could touch them. But I soon realized that this was a realm that no longer belonged to the physical world. Between flashes and sighs, I found a calm that, even though it was preceded by chaos, calmed every fiber of my being. It was as if every cell of my existence was absorbing ancient knowledge, a wisdom that surpassed mere human experience. At that very moment, the transition was not just an escape from the body, but the beginning of a new journey of self-knowledge. An open door to dimensions where matter and spirit meet in a silent and profound dialogue. As I advanced through this surreal landscape, the sensation of floating gradually transformed into an experience of immense intimacy. In the midst of that whirlwind of colors and sounds that defied logic, I began to make out the silhouette of a figure emerging from the darkness dotted with light. Her contours were soft, and at the same time, deeply defined, as if she carried the weight of countless lives in her gaze. I approached, guided by a force that transcends reason. The figure stopped, and in that instant, I felt like time had stopped. A reverent silence enveloped the environment, broken only by the almost inaudible whisper that seemed to emanate from the very essence of that being. "Who are you?" I asked, with a voice that seemed to echo from a deep corner of my soul, even without using my lips. There was no immediate response, just a look of inexplicable tenderness, which seemed to say, "I'm here to welcome you." As I let the calming aura envelop me, I realized that, despite not recognizing any familiar faces, there was something extraordinarily comforting about the being's presence. It was then that I understood. This was not an ordinary person, but the personification of an ancestral presence, a link between past generations and the present. His clothes seemed to be made of light and shadow, as if they were woven from the threads of time itself. The figure, who would later come to be known in my memory as Madison Brooks, emanated an ancient wisdom, capable of penetrating the barriers of human understanding. "You have doubts, Michael," whispered the presence, not with words that I could hear, but with a sensation that invaded every corner of my being. Communication transcended the verbal, directly reaching my consciousness. Each syllable of that message was like a key that opened locked doors inside me. Despite the sudden impact, an unusual peace settled in, and all the worries I carried were momentarily dissipated. Sitting in a meadow of light as the scenery transformed around me, I began to realize the depth of what was happening. Amid the dance of colors and shapes, the figure continued to reveal itself. "I am the continuity of all the stories that came before you," he seemed to say, and in his gaze, there was the certainty that each experience, each pain, and each joy were part of a great cycle. I saw in her the reflection of my ancestors, those who came before me, and those who were yet to come. The environment around us, once chaotic, now pulsed with silent harmony. The feeling of belonging was almost tangible. The figure not only guided me, but also seemed to offer me an invitation to delve even deeper into the essence of my being. "Accept what I am, and you will understand the purpose that brought you here," he echoed again, this time with the conviction of an unshakable destiny. As I absorbed each silent word, the colors around me began to intensify, transforming the scene into a living tapestry of memories and possibilities. The ancestral presence, with its calm and strength, became the mirror in which I saw reflected not only the past, but also the future that awaited me. At that moment, I understood that my meeting with her was more than a simple episode of a near-death experience. It was the beginning of a journey of self-knowledge and reconnection with that which is eternal. As the ancestral figure slowly dissipated amidst the sparkling colors of that universe outside of time, a new wave of sensations invaded my consciousness. Sitting in a meadow of light that seemed to pulse in time with my racing heart, I felt an even more intense presence, as if an ancient and wise voice had finally found its way to speak. "Michael, are you ready to discover the hidden truth of your destiny?" The question, although silent, echoed deeply in my being. For a moment, the atmosphere was charged with an almost palpable energy, and I, filled with a mixture of fear and fascination, responded, "Yes, I need to understand. Why am I here? What is my purpose?" The answer came like a symphony of images and feelings. Amidst flashes of light, I was able to glimpse scenes of a life full of choices and paths not taken. Each vision was accompanied by a feeling of déjà vu, as if he had already lived those moments before. A narrative flowed before my eyes, from the first steps of childhood to the challenges that marked my existence. All experiences were connected like pieces of a great cosmic puzzle. "You have strayed from the path that was always meant for you," the voice came again, this time with a clarity that touched every fiber of my being. "The life you lived, the moments of doubt, and the ephemeral joys were just rehearsals for the great act that is yet to come." His words were not mere advice. They were invitations for me to see beyond the superficialities of everyday life and delve into the deep meaning of each choice. Amid this torrent of revelations, my mind desperately searched for a point of support, something that could translate the complexity of the message I was receiving. "But how can I correct course?" I questioned, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. The answer came in the form of images. Me, in front of a crossroads, with paths opening in different directions, each one filled with light, but also with shadows. "Your detour is not a mistake, but a learning experience," the voice continued with comforting softness. "The near-death experiences you have lived are divine invitations to reevaluate your interior, to rediscover the mission that was hidden amid the noise of the material world." Upon hearing these words, a feeling of responsibility began to form within me, as if every step I had taken up until that moment had been part of a great preparation for this very moment. Silent tears began to slide down my face, not from sadness, but from a deep understanding. With every drop, I felt the urgency to return to Earth with a new outlook, with the conviction that my life had a greater purpose than simply passing through the days. "I understand," I murmured, almost in a whisper, as the image of the paths cleared, revealing a future where every choice would carry immeasurable weight. This revelation was accompanied by a feeling of rebirth. The world around me, previously so chaotic and abstract, was transformed into a rich tapestry of meanings. I realized that it was not the end, but the beginning of a journey of self-knowledge and spiritual transformation. The mission that now unfolded before me required courage to face everyday challenges, a commitment to faith, and a careful look at the pitfalls of materialism. With my heart filled with gratitude and my spirit inflamed by this new truth, I felt that the universe was conspiring for me to find my way back. Each revelation, each image projected in that ethereal dimension, was a reminder that my trajectory on Earth had a meaning that transcended the ordinary. As the final words of the revelation faded into my mind, the landscape around me began to change in ways that were as subtle as they were startling. Suddenly, the chaos of abstract colors gave way to a vision of serene beauty. A heavenly garden unfolded before my eyes, so real and vivid that it seemed to have been painted with the brushes of the divine himself. I was floating in a space where gravity no longer exerted its power, and the feeling of lightness was accompanied by an inexplicable peace. All around me, lush trees bent toward sources of light, while flowers of impossible colors bloomed in a harmony that transcended any earthly pattern. Every petal, every leaf seemed to tell a story, whispering ancient secrets that time had almost forgotten. Walking through this dreamlike landscape, I could hear the contagious laughter of children playing carefree in fields of flowers. Their laughter echoed like symphonies of pure joy, inviting me to forget the pain and uncertainty that still resonated in my heart. Approaching a small group of children, I heard one of them say, "Look, there, where light mixes with sound. It is as if the sky has come down to play with us." These words, although simple, revealed the innocence and truth that permeated that enchanted place. On the horizon, the scene expanded to include animals of shapes and colors I could never have imagined. There were deer with wise eyes, birds with shimmering wings, and creatures that blended traits of earthly and mythical animals. Everything coexisted in a dance of harmony, where each being seemed to have an essential role in the great symphony of life. In a moment, a deer approached and, with a look that overflowed with understanding, seemed to say to me without words, "Here, everything is one. Every being, every life, is part of a divine tapestry." As I marveled at that sight, a gentle breeze, filled with floral scents and a freshness I had never felt before, enveloped me. This breeze seemed to carry with it memories of a distant past, and promises of a future full of possibilities. I let myself be carried away by it, walking along trails of light that stretched out like paths of gold, inviting me to explore every corner of that sublime garden. Sitting on a stone that had magically appeared, I closed my eyes to absorb every detail of that environment. Upon opening them again, a figure appeared in front of me, not as an imposing being, but as a presence that exuded serenity and wisdom. It was as if the garden itself had sent a guardian to accompany me. He whispered, "Michael, this place is a reflection of the harmony that can exist within you. Every flower, every corner, is a reminder that life, even in the midst of adversity, holds moments of infinite beauty." Those words resonated deeply, filling me with hope and a sense of belonging that I hadn't experienced in a long time. For long minutes there, among the birdsong and the rustling of the leaves, I experienced a silent communion with the universe. The vision of the heavenly garden was not just an escape, but an invitation to rediscover the essence of love and compassion. I knew that even if that place faded like a dream upon waking, its message would remain engraved in me forever. As the heavenly garden gently faded before my eyes, a new sensation took over the room. The air, permeated with the scent of ethereal flowers, seemed to vibrate at a unique frequency. Suddenly, amidst the natural symphony, a powerful voice began to emerge, as if the universe itself was addressing me. That voice, at once imposing and welcoming, cut through the silence with a clarity that made me shudder. Michael, have you ever stopped to think that the choice between serving God or conforming to this world is more decisive than you think? The words resonated directly, not through my ears, but penetrating deeply into my consciousness. It was as if every cell of my being was being awakened to a long-forgotten truth. The tone was not threatening, but rather a summons, an urgent call to awaken to a greater reality. At first, I was immobilized, trying to understand the origin of that message. I searched my memory and the surrounding space for any sign that could identify the source of this mysterious voice. In response, I saw an ethereal figure approach. It was as if the air itself condensed, giving form to a being that emanated an aura of spiritual authority. His countenance, serene and illuminated, suggested that he carried the wisdom of the centuries. I couldn't help but listen, fascinated, as the figure continued. Michael, the complacency of everyday life and the false security of the material world are traps that divert your soul from the path of truth. Every moment is a choice, every decision, a step that can bring you closer or further from the divine. These words seem to describe not just a warning, but wise advice, filled with an urgency that was felt in every fiber of my being. I felt a mix of fear and hope, fear of the unknown, and hope that, through this spiritual vigilance, I could rediscover the purpose that was dormant within me. But how can I maintain this vigilance if the comforts and routines of this world imprison me? I questioned with a trembling voice, while my eyes searched for answers in the figure that emerged from nowhere. The answer came with unexpected softness. You need to cultivate a connection with the sacred, Michael. Reflect, pray, meditate. Don't allow the distractions of the world to steal your essence. Remember, true security lies in your faith, not in the illusion of material comfort. The surrounding scenery seemed to respond to these words. The vibrant colors of the celestial garden intensified, and a sense of urgency permeated the environment. Each leaf, each breeze, as if loaded with hidden meanings, reinforced the voice's message. I felt like I was at a crucial point in my journey, a moment of choice that would define not only my destiny, but also the way I would see life from then on. The figure continued to speak, its voice echoing like a mantra. Do not be seduced by routine. Keep the flame of spirituality alive, even in moments of greatest trial, for it is in adversity that true faith reveals itself. Those words stuck in my mind. The feeling was that, in some way, that message was preparing me for future challenges, urging me to fight against the complacency and superficiality of everyday life. I felt a responsibility to carry this spiritual vigilance like an invisible armor, capable of protecting me from the temptations and distractions of the modern world. And, in that moment, I realized that that voice was more than a simple echo. In the void, it was a divine call to transform each choice into a step towards truth and light. As I slowly retreated from that dimension of light and enchantment, I was drawn into a reality that, although familiar, carried a new and unsettling weight. Back in the physical world, every sound and every movement took on renewed meaning. I, Michael Smith, looked with dazzled and critical eyes at the everyday landscape of Boston, and I couldn't help but notice how the gears of everyday life hid subtle but devastating dangers to the human spirit. As I walked through the familiar streets, the routine presented itself as a sea of predictability. where every corner and every face was part of a scenario that, in my eyes, now revealed its illusory facet. One rainy morning, while waiting for the bus, I heard a conversation in the distance. Two men were discussing plans for the weekend, but the banality of their words made me reflect. Are we trapped in a cycle where material security blinds us to the mysteries of life? This question echoed in my mind, an uneasiness that multiplied every moment. Sitting on a park bench, I remembered the words of the voice that had called me to spiritual vigilance. "Don't be seduced by routine," she said, as a reminder that complacency was a trap. There I was, immersed in an environment where apparent comfort was hidden behind false security. Around me, modernity was celebrated with its skyscrapers and neon lights. But behind each shiny facade, I saw the danger of a sleeping spirit, a being that, surrendered to sameness, stopped searching for the essential truth of existence. As he reflected, an old friend James approached. He had always been practical, used to seeing life objectively. "Michael, are you okay? You look different today," he commented with a worried look. I replied with a tone full of concern. "James, it's not about being good or bad. It's about realizing that the security we are sold every day is an illusion. We are stuck in a routine that prevents us from seeing what really matters." James, with a raised eyebrow, replied, "But life is made up of these little moments. You don't have to look for something great to be happy." And for an instant, I realized the duality of the human being, the search for comfort, and the need to awaken to a greater purpose. What presented itself as stability could, in fact, be the prison of a soul that refused to evolve. As the bus finally arrived, I felt that inner dialogue was the harbinger of a personal transformation. Every word exchanged, every silent reflection, served as a warning of the dangers of conformity. The modern world, with all its technology and predictability, offered security, but it also created a trap where the human essence could be lost, absorbed by the inertia of everyday life. At that moment, I decided I could no longer ignore the call that was echoing in my mind and heart. Every choice I made until then, every day lived without question, became a reminder that it was necessary to cultivate spiritual vigilance so as not to succumb to the routine that so seduces and, at the same time, corrodes. The feeling was overwhelming. The recognition that living in the illusion of security was, in fact, a danger that threatened the authenticity of existence. And so, with my heart racing and my mind buzzing with thoughts, I promised myself that each day would be an opportunity to break with the sameness, always seeking the truth and renewal that my near-death experience had awakened. The restlessness that blossomed within me soon turned into a vision of the future, a disturbing yet illuminating glimpse of what was to come. I walked the streets of Boston, and everyday life, once so familiar, began to carry a new weight, the anticipation of decisive times. Around every corner and every conversation I heard, I felt a whisper of destiny, reminding me that the apparent stability of the present hid challenges that would intensify in an overwhelming way. One gray afternoon, as I watched the clouds creep over the old buildings in the center, my mind began to fill with fragmented images. In the midst of these flashes, I saw a transformed city where the comfort of the skyscrapers gave way to an invisible tension, and each inhabitant seemed to carry with them a silent restlessness. This perception was not a figment of my imagination. It was the call for me to prepare for a future where every decision would have immeasurable consequences. Sitting in a cozy cafe off State Street, I overheard a heated conversation between two patrons. "Have you noticed how everything seems more intense lately?" asked one of them with a worried look. "Yes, it seems that we are on the verge of something great, but at the same time scary," replied the other, while staring at the horizon as if waiting for a sign. These words echoed in my mind, mixing with the revelations I had already experienced on that other plane. The voice that had called me to spiritual vigilance once again emerged in my thoughts, this time with a tone of urgency. Michael, prepare yourself. Starting March 1st, 2025, the world will face pressures and temptations that will test your faith and courage. You must be ready to resist the seductions of materialism and embrace the spiritual armor that will protect your essence. In a moment of introspection, walking along the Charles River, I met Harper Johnson, the doctor who had overseen my return to physical life. He seemed more thoughtful than usual, as if he also sensed the impending changes. Michael, sometimes the health of the body reflects the tension of the spirit. I have noticed a climate of anxiety throughout the city. Something's about to happen, Harper said, his voice thick with concern. I feel this restlessness too, Harper. It's as if time was sending me a message, something that requires preparation and deep reflection, I replied, feeling the weight of each word. The conversation with Harper further deepened my conviction that I could not allow myself to be complacent. The images of the future, even if vague, showed a society where spiritual choices would be crucial for the survival of the human essence. Every gesture, every thought, would have the power to influence not only my destiny, but that of the entire community that surrounded me. At dusk, under the faint glow of the streetlights, I decided it was time to act. I retreated to my house, where, in front of a small cross hanging on the wall, I said a silent prayer, asking for strength and clarity to face the challenges that lay ahead. I knew the path would not be easy, but I also understood that preparation, both spiritual and emotional, would be the only shield capable of protecting my soul from future storms. At dawn, a new day dawned in Boston, but for me, it carried a unique emotional charge. The mystical experience that I had lived in the last few days pulsed in every beat of my heart, and I knew that, despite having reached moments of light and peace, it was time to return to the world I knew. However, this return did not mean a simple end of the journey, but the beginning of a new phase, the rediscovery of my true purpose. I vividly remember the moment I felt it was time to return. I was in a park, amid the first rays of sunlight that colored the horizon with hues of gold and orange, and I realized that, although the celestial garden and the visions I had experienced were enchanting, there was something inescapable in my essence that cried out to continue the mission on Earth. As I walked slowly, I met Evelyn Carter, a longtime friend whose presence always provided me with a sense of comfort. "Michael, you look different," she said, with a look of concern and curiosity. "I experienced something that transcends words, Evelyn," I replied, trying to convey the depth of what I had experienced, although words seemed insufficient to convey the full magnitude of the inner transformation. The decision to return was not made impulsively. On countless nights, I internally debated the desire to remain in that state of infinite harmony versus the responsibility to fulfill my role in this world. It was Harper Johnson, the doctor who had taken care of me after impact, who helped me understand that return was inevitable. "Michael, life gives us these opportunities for rebirth, but the journey does not end at the threshold between life and death," Harper explained, with the conviction of someone who had already witnessed miracles. His words resonated with me, reinforcing the idea that each experience, no matter how extraordinary it was, had a greater purpose. Upon returning, the hospital environment and the comfort of the routine greeted me with a mixture of relief and apprehension. My friends and family, especially Dominic Reyes, that skeptical friend who had been transformed by the experience, never failed to express their admiration and concern. "You're back, Michael," Dominic said, with a tone that mixed surprise and respect. "Yes, and I'm not the same anymore," I replied, while feeling the weight of responsibility and the renewed clarity about the mission I now carried. In the weeks that followed, I immersed myself in deep reflection. Every gesture, every everyday choice gained a new meaning. The casual conversations with Evelyn, the wise guidance from Harper, and the sincere dialogues with Dominic became bricks in the reconstruction of a life that, although apparently ordinary, was now imbued with a transformative mission. I relearned to see the world through the eyes of someone who has already experienced the sublime, understanding that the purpose of existence lies both in the journey and in the daily struggles. The journey back was marked by moments of internal conflict in which the desire to remain in the peace of the spiritual realms battled with the commitment to those who loved me and needed my presence. However, the awareness that I had a mission, to be an agent of transformation, to inspire and help others to see the true essence of life, gave me strength to face everyday challenges. Every step I took in the bustling city of Boston was, for me, a reaffirmation that true redemption lies not in escaping reality, but in embracing it with courage, faith, and unconditional love. Back in my routine in Boston, the experience I lived had transformed every gesture, every thought, into a conscious act of faith and determination. After so many moments of revelation and introspection, I understood that my existence would never be the same. Now, more than ever, I saw myself imbued with a transformative mission that would transcend the ordinary, illuminating not only my path, but also that of those who crossed paths with me. One cool autumn morning, as I walked through the Boston University campus where it all began, I felt the weight of the inner calling. The cold wind carried with it the murmur of the past and the hope of the future. I remember well a conversation I had with Evelyn, my faithful friend, who seemed to understand the depth of my changes. "Michael, there's a light in you that I've never seen before," she said, her eyes reflecting both surprise and admiration. Evelyn, the journey I experienced taught me that faith is not something that can be acquired just through empty words or prayers. It is necessary to live each day with purpose, even when the world insists on dragging us into the routine, I replied, feeling the sincerity of each word. In that conversation, I realized that my commitment was not only to my own salvation, but to the mission of being a beacon for others. Harper, the doctor who took care of me, also shared this view. One afternoon at the office, he commented, "Michael, returning to life was just the beginning. Now you have the opportunity to show that faith can be the force that moves mountains, that transforms the ordinary into extraordinary." These words, simple but full of meaning, reinforced my desire to be more than a survivor. I needed to turn my experience into concrete actions that inspired change. On Sunday, at a small meeting in a Boston community center, I found myself in front of a group of people who, each in their own way, were looking for answers to everyday challenges. I decided to share part of my journey, not as a sermon, but as a candid account of someone who has gone through liminal moments and emerged with new vision. Between stories of overcoming and emotional dialogues, he said, "I'm not a man of lectures or books, but I carry with me the certainty that every moment is a chance to be reborn. Life presents us with challenges so that we can discover how resilient and capable we are of transforming our reality." The silence that followed my speech was filled with emotion, and I noticed that some eyes filled with tears of gratitude and recognition. That near-death experience, which initially seemed like a devastating blow, turned out to be the kickoff for a new mission. A mission that does not require spotlights or applause, but that is built with each gesture of compassion, with each act of love for others. I started to see faith as a daily commitment, a practice that manifests itself in simple gestures: helping a neighbor, offering a word of comfort, extending a hand to those in need. As I walked through the streets of Boston, reflecting on the lessons that the experience had given me, I decided that I would never let myself be carried away by the comfort of everyday life. Routine, even though it offers stability, can become a trap for those who forget to seek inner truth. My mission thus became a constant reminder that life is a precious gift, full of opportunities to be agents of transformation. And at each sunset, As I watched the sky turn to colors that reminded me of that heavenly garden, I reaffirmed my commitment to faith and the mission of illuminating the path of those who, like me, seek meaning and redemption. Transformation is an ongoing process, and today, more than ever, I choose to live with integrity, courage, and unconditional love.